All right, welcome back. Today we are diving deep, and I mean deep, into one of the most cryptic, symbolic verses in the entire book of Revelation. Seriously, this thing is a prophetic puzzle that has had people scratching their heads for centuries.
Okay, so you hear that, right? A great earthquake, a tenth of a city just gone, 7,000 people slain. It sounds absolutely chaotic, doesn't it? Definitely like something out of a far-off apocalyptic future. But what if it isn't? What if the key to unlocking all these symbols isn't about looking forward, but actually looking back?
And that, right there, is the big question for today's explainer. The source material we're digging into makes a pretty bold argument. What if this verse isn't a prophecy about what's still to come, but is actually a highly symbolic description of an event that has already happened?
So our goal here is to just walk through this one specific interpretation, piece by piece. We're going to see how it decodes every single symbol in this verse, the earthquake, the fallen city, the number of casualties, and ties it all back to a single moment in history. And there it is, the big reveal. The core idea we're exploring is that Revelation 11:13 is a symbolic vision of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Yeah, every single part of it, from the ground shaking to the city falling, is seen as a direct reference to what happened on that day. So, the real question is, how on earth do you connect all those dots? Well, let's break it down.
Let's start with the first piece of the puzzle, the one that's the most literal, a great earthquake. This is kind of our anchor point, the thing that connects this wild, prophetic vision to a recorded historical event.
Okay, so the foundation of the whole argument starts right here. The Gospel of Matthew explicitly says there was an earthquake at the exact moment Jesus died. The source we're looking at says, hey, this isn't a coincidence. It connects directly to Old Testament prophecies where God literally says he's going to shake the earth. So in this view, the earthquake isn't just some random natural disaster, it's a physical sign of a massive spiritual event, a moment of divine judgment.
Okay, so from there, we move from the literal into the symbolic. We have the earthquake, sure, but what about the 10th part of the city that fell? This is where the interpretation gets really, really interesting.
So to understand what the 10th part could mean here, you first have to get the biblical concept of a tithe. A tithe was that 10%, the first and best portion that was understood to rightfully belong to God. It was given willingly as an act of worship, an act of honor. Just keep that idea of a rightful portion in your head.
Now check this out. According to this interpretation, the religious system of the day had essentially robbed God by refusing to give Jesus his rightful honor and glory. So that falling 10th in Revelation, it's not a tithe that's willingly given. It's that exact same portion of honor being forcibly reclaimed by God through judgment. It's divine payback.
And what's the city that this part falls from? Well, it's not just a physical place like Jerusalem. In this view, this city symbolizes the entire corrupt religious and political machine, the whole temple system and its cozy alliance with Roman power that worked together to condemn Jesus. Its very foundation was being shaken to the core.
And that brings us to the powers that were running that system. This interpretation links that corrupt city to another super famous image from Revelation, the beast. Specifically, a beast with 10 horns, which represents a complete, full-blown alliance of earthly power set up against God. So in this reading, the beast isn't some literal monster from a fantasy movie. It's the unholy marriage of two very real powers. On one side, you've got the political might of the Roman Empire. Think Pontius Pilate and Herod. And on the other, you have the religious authority of Jerusalem's priesthood. When they teamed up, well, that was the beastly system that crucified Jesus.
And get this wasn't some new idea that just popped up. This interpretation points right back to prophecies like Psalm 2, which predicted a day when earthly kings and rulers would literally conspire together against God's anointed one. The crucifixion, then, is seen as the direct, absolute fulfillment of that ancient prophecy.
So why 10 horns? What's with the number 10? The argument is that 10 isn't a literal head count of kings. In biblical symbolism, the number 10 often stands for completeness, or a full measure of something. So 10 horns and 10 crowns symbolizes the total and complete measure of worldly rebellion from both the religious and political sides, all united in that one moment.
And this symbolism has deep roots in Israel's own history. Remember, the nation had split. You had 10 northern tribes that fell into open rebellion and idolatry, and 2 southern tribes that held on to the temple but became, as the source puts it, lukewarm and hypocritical. At the cross, both of those spirits,
The spirit of open rebellion and the spirit of lukewarm corruption came together, making the entire divided house guilty in rejecting the Messiah.
And wow, this quote just drives the point home, doesn't it? This is the ultimate moment of that rebellion. When Pilate gives them a choice, the religious leaders don't choose God. They choose Caesar. They literally pledge their allegiance to the earthly beast over the Son of God. For this interpretation, that's the final nail in the coffin that seals the judgment on their entire system.
So, let's move to the last part of the verse and see how this all wraps up. We've covered the earthquake and the fallen city. Now we've got the casualties and the survivors.
What about the 7,000 slain? Again, we're not thinking literal body count here. It's all about the symbolism. Just like 10 represents the completeness of rebellion, the number 7 in the Bible often represents divine perfection and completeness. So 7,000 slain symbolizes a perfectly measured and complete divine judgment on that whole corrupt system.
But the judgment isn't the whole story. The verse ends with a remnant, a small group who were terrified and gave glory to God. And this is seen as pointing to the very first believers, people like that Roman centurion standing at the foot of the cross who, after seeing everything that happened, it declared, truly this was the Son of God.
So let's just recap the whole puzzle. You've got the great earthquake, which is the literal shaking at the cross. The fallen tenth, which is God reclaiming his honor. The 7,000 slain, which represents a perfect judgment on that corrupt system. And the remnant giving glory? Those are the first eyewitnesses who actually got what was happening. It all clicks into place.
So in the end, what this interpretation gives us is a really powerful reframing of the crucifixion. It wasn't a moment of defeat for God's plan. It was the moment of absolute victory, where the combined earthly crowns of religion and politics were shattered by a divine judgment that proved once and for all who was in charge.
And that kind of leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought. Now, whether you agree with this interpretation or not, it really challenges us to look deeper, doesn't it? If a verse that looks like it's all about the future could actually be a symbolic retelling of the past, it makes you wonder, what other hidden layers of meaning are just waiting to be discovered in texts we think we already know? It's a powerful idea to chew on. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.